All right, well, we're live, so let's go ahead and get started. This is going to be a Lake Stevens City Council workshop tonight. And with that, I will turn it over to Council Vice President Peter Shagan.
Okay.
Unless you want me to run it.
I don't, Angie, I
think Angie,
is she not available?
yeah, I don't think she's going to be here tonight.
Oh, okay. Is that,
I think she signed in via Zoom, but
Oh,
I
is she?
don't know that she's available to run the meeting.
oh, okay.
Okay, I can run it if you.
Whatever you want to do, go ahead. Sure.
Okay, all right. All right. It's going to be pretty short agenda for tonight. I'll call the meeting to order, and we do have some discussion items with Barb first, the audit exit conference.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have invited the state auditors here tonight to go over the exit conference. That is the ending of our financial statement audit for 2021. Matthew Heist is here as well. You probably remember him, our finance manager. He was mostly the audit liaison this year, so he is here with us tonight, and I will go ahead and let Erica and Miranda introduce themselves.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Erica Davies. I served as the audit supervisor for the audit, and here with me today is Miranda Shales. She served as the audit lead. We've prepared a PowerPoint presentation for you all today, but it looks like the host has disabled participant screen sharing. I'm not sure if somebody would be able to turn that on super quick so that we could share our PowerPoint.
Yes, that is on me here, and I'm gonna go ahead and give you permission. Okay, try it now.
Perfect. Oh, awesome. Oh boy. All right, thank you so much for your patience with that. Okay, I believe Miranda is going to get us started with a few opening remarks.
All right, yes. So for anyone who may be new to the audit process, this slide touches on the main reasons why our audits matter. One of the most important things about audits is their role to increase trust in government. Our audits are able to do this because the public trusts the state auditor's office as an independent organization that provides transparent examinations of the operations of state and local governments. Another important role of audits is their ability to identify areas where efficiency can be improved and you can be more effective in complying with requirements. And audits can also tell you where you're already working efficiently and effectively. So our goal today will be to make sure that you understand the results of your audit and answer any questions that you might have. All right, so we conducted a financial statement audit for the period of January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. And the objective of a financial statement audit is to issue an opinion as to whether the information included in the financial statements can be relied upon to make decisions. And we're pleased to report that we are issuing an unmodified, clean audit opinion on the city's financial statements, which is the opinion that you want to receive and provides assurance the financial statements are stated fairly and are materially correct. It is also important to note the city has elected to prepare its financial statements using the cash basis method of reporting authorized under the state of Washington due to its simplified reporting requirements. National standards require the auditor to disclose in their report whenever a local government chooses to report their financial statements under any reporting method other than US GAAP. And as a result, we've issued a second adverse opinion noting the city has chosen not to report under US GAAP. Additionally, our audits are conducted in accordance with government auditing standards, which require that we gain an understanding of the city's internal controls or process that it goes through to prepare the financial statements. Should we identify a weakness or concern with that process that could or did result in significant issues in the financial statements, we would be required to bring those to your attention and include that information in our report. And we're pleased to report that we did not identify any concerns in the city's process that were required to be brought to your attention or included in our report. And lastly, audit standards also require us to consider compliance with applicable laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements, where non-compliance could affect the fair presentation of the financial statements. And we noted no instances of non-compliance that were material to the financial statements to the city. In relation to the financial statement audit, professional audit standards also require that we share with you whether there were material misstatements that were identified and subsequently corrected by management. And we're pleased to report that there were no material misstatements identified during the course of our audit. And we're also required to note whether there were any uncorrected misstatements that remain in the audited financial statements. And we're happy to report that there were no misstatements to correct. And lastly, audit standards also require auditors to evaluate certain risks, such as the possibility that management may be able to circumvent certain controls. And we're pleased to share with you that our evaluation showed no instances or possibilities where controls were circumvented.
Perfect. Well, that was pretty short and sweet. This city had a really great audit, clean, unmodified opinion, which is exactly what you want. So very short and sweet here, but we just have a couple other closing remarks while we have you all here today that we wanted to touch on briefly. First of all, we wanted to give you an update on the audit costs that we provided as an estimate at the beginning of the audit. We're very pleased to share that our audit costs are coming in about $2,500 less than the original estimate due to travel savings from conducting a remote audit. And then your next audit that is scheduled for the city does have a few more types of audits associated with it. We performed a one-year financial statement audit for the city for this year. Next year, you'll be up for the accountability audit for public resources, as well as the annual financial statement audit. And then also a newer type of engagement, which is an attestation engagement for compliance with the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds program, which is a federal program related to this administrating of these federal funds. So we have provided an estimate for the cost of the next audit in your exit packet. That was included as part of your agenda packet. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. As far as your report publication goes, we publish reports directly on our website. And we usually publish our reports within 2 weeks of the exit conference. If you have already been signed up and notified to get those alerts from our office, you'll receive one of those alerts when your report is set to be published. If not, you can definitely sign up. There's a really easy way to sign up on our website to get those, and you'll be emailed once your report is set to be released that way. When the report does get released, it triggers what we call an audit survey. And the audit survey is something that is really important to our office. We do view this as a service that we are providing, and we really take seriously any type of feedback that you have about the audit process. The survey, I believe, goes to Barb, but it can be forwarded on to any other members of city staff or the council who would like to partake in that survey and provide any feedback. It would really mean a lot to us. And then before we go, we wanted to give a quick shout out to both Barb and Matthew for their helpfulness and assistance during the audit. Like we mentioned before, there was some cost savings due to the ability to conduct a remote audit. And this really does hinge upon our ability to work well with the staff of an entity and the entity's responsiveness to our audit requests and ability to provide documents electronically. And we just value our working relationship so much with both Barb and Matthew. The audit was very smooth and quick, and we just really, enjoyed the process as much as you can for an audit. So just wanted to give them a quick shout out before we go. And with that, if there's any other questions about the audit, we'd be happy to share those or answer those. But if not, we will give you back time for your meeting.
Any questions for the auditors?
I just like to just thank the auditors too. You guys were really good to work with and allowed us time and we're very respectful of our time. So we really appreciate that and be able to get you the documents. So I was with the auditors a couple of years ago. So it's kind of also nice to be able to just see people I used to work with too. So and working in a different manner with you. So appreciate it.
I second,
questions?
thank you.
No questions. I just want to say thank you to both of you for your hard work and to you ladies for your hard work. It just amazes me. I can barely add numbers together. So for me, it isn't a big thing. It's amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, great. Appreciate your work, ladies, on this audit. It's good to see that we're doing good things with taxpayer dollars and making sure there's nothing shady going on, which is wonderful. So with that,
Yes.
move forward to Ann Bennett, Executive Director of WCIA, with our do's and don'ts presentation of the night.
Well, I wanted to say, first of all, thank you very much for having me, and I'm really enjoying being in person. I've done this training remotely, and I think it really works when we're here together. And I like this presentation to be interactive. I like when council members kind of challenge me with some questions, and I'll try and answer them. But what I'll do is I'll start out with a little introduction about who we are, what we do, and then kind of take you through various exposures that council members can create for the city in terms of liability. So as mentioned, I'm the executive director of Washington City's Insurance Authority. I've been there 26 years. Yes, I was a child prodigy, believe it or not. No, going on my 27th year. So a lot of what I talk about are things that I've seen through the years and some of the history of claims and litigation that we've had. So next slide, please. Washington City's Insurance Authority, we're actually an interlocal governmental entity. So when you mentioned talking with the state auditor, we're actually audited by the state auditor's office as well. We're created by interlocal, and what occurred was back in 1981, cities couldn't get insurance. We're actually very close right now to the same crisis for insurance procurement for cities as we were in 1981. And what occurred is that the legislature allowed cities to join together to self-insure their risks. And they're called risk pools. And that's what we are. We're a risk pool. They exist nationwide, and about 80% of all municipal entities, schools, counties, cities are part of a risk pool, a risk sharing pool. So you're basically the insureds running the insurance company. So we have 165 members. Lake Stevens joined in 1987. So you've been with WCIA for many, many years. Many years ago, I was a risk management representative at WCIA, and Lake Stevens was one of my cities. So I've been to your community quite a bit, have worked in claims with the city for many years. So we've had a long-standing relationship. We're run by a board of directors made up of the members. So the members decide what we do, what we offer in terms of coverage, in terms of programs. We assist members with claims, but our biggest mission is to help avoid claims in the first place through risk management. Our rates are stable and they're transparent. If you asked your insurance company, show me how you got to my rate, what you're charging me, I want to see the math behind it. They can't do that. I can do that. We use an independent outside actuary, and it's all transparent. Coverage is dictated by a coverage document. It's not an insurance policy because we're not insurance. We're a different entity altogether. And what's nice about that is that you as the members decide the coverage and I interpret the coverage. So we have a board of directors. Every member sits on that board of directors, and we have an executive committee that's elected that's made up of 9. And if there was ever a coverage dispute, you get to bring it to your fellow members. So if you have a problem with the decision I make, you have the ability to appeal it to other members. Next slide, please. So we provide all your liability insurance, auto liability, general liability, errors and omissions, which would be council decisions, employment practices, as well as public safety. You have $20 million per occurrence. WCIA, we self-insure the first 4 million of every loss. So by self-insuring the 4 million, we have a lot of the decision-making with the claim. It's not passed on to another insurance company. Above that, we have what we call a pool of pools, and national pool that reinsures us, and then we go to the market. We don't hit traditional insurance until we're at the $10 million mark. So there's quite a bit of say so. Yes.
Do you do special purpose districts too, or that?
We have a few. What I would say is they're related to our members. We do have Lake Stevens Water District. They came on board just about 3 years ago. So the idea was that I think, I don't want to, that there's going to be, you might take them over, you might not. So that's one of the reasons they joined. It's usually related to a member. There's special district pools out there. There's 2 others that do that, but we do have some of them. When it comes to deciding, I'll just give you a quick example. This last coverage, we were voting on what kind of coverages we wanted. And as you may know, behavioral health navigation in law enforcement is becoming a very popular addition to public safety functions. And so what we looked at is we had what's called a medical malpractice exclusion. And many of our members said, can we make sure that that isn't triggered? And can we make sure that we are insuring these new employees? And the answer was yes. So we were able to change that coverage document. The members voted on it. That's the kind of power members have. We also offer first party property, auto. We buy or you buy crime and fidelity through a group purchase. And then for members, we purchase pollution premises and cyber coverage. So again, we try and help members with all of your various liability needs. So with that, let's get into the important part of how you can create liability. And one of the tenets of risk management is trying to avoid liability in the first place and giving you the tools to do so. So WCIA has a robust risk management program, and this is all part of it to help our cities better manage their risks. So the first thing is the good news is as you're serving on a council as an individual, you receive absolute immunity for legislative decisions. That's a very strong immunity. It occurs when you're making decisions, let's just say adopting the budget, dealing with ordinances, dealing with zoning. It is so strong that we had a case where there was a zoning decision that basically was looking at an area as a historical district. And the owner of the property was so angry, he sued all of the individual council members. And we pointed out, you can't do that. You can't sue them individually. They have an absolute immunity. It continued on through litigation to all the way through the Ninth Circuit, believe it or not, with all kinds of appeals. And we ended up receiving $100,000 in sanctions and reimbursement of the attorney's fees because that immunity is so absolute that there was no way that lawsuit should have proceeded and there should not have been any appeals filed.
Sounds like his attorney was giving him good advice.
So, again, I would say, as long as you're within your role and you're working as a body as a whole, if you're out individually doing some things, and we'll get into where you might have some individual liability, but, you're here on the dais making legislative decisions, you have an immunity. And it's within the context of your meetings and your decisions at your meetings. So next slide. One area, and I will say Lake Stevens has not had a problem in this arena, is land use. WCIA highly recommends the use of hearings examiners. That really helps councils avoid a lot of the liability. Oftentimes, there are land use decisions that are made and the litigation ensues because it's alleged the decision was arbitrary and capricious that the council made on appeal. There's also something called the appearance of fairness doctrine, which says if you're sitting in a quasi judicial role in a land use appeal, and a reasonable person from the outside thinks you might have a bias, then that can get you in trouble with appearance of fairness. And I am very, I would say I'm touching on this topic. We do whole trainings on these two topics alone. And so, you know, if you are ever going to sit in quasi judicial roles as during a land use hearing, your city attorney will tell you that. They will let you know that, and you can have a whole training on how you want to be in that quasi judicial role. And we call it quasi judicial because you're sitting like a judge, and you must be fair and impartial, and you must appear fair and impartial to an outside observer. So again, you know, this is an area that I would say I recommend if you're going to do this, then we recommend using hearing examiners, because then they make findings of fact and conclusions of law, and you avoid those two areas completely. There's other ways that councils have gotten themselves in trouble, and that's inserting themselves into the process. And so I've listed two cases there. The first one was one of ours, Westmark versus Burien. And this involved a project that started prior to the city's incorporation. And it was a controversial project involving apartments. And one of the reasons the city incorporated was because they didn't want apartments in their community. They wanted to just have single family homes. So this is let's go in the way back machine. This was 1993. So this project was halfway through the pipeline. The city decided to take it over from King County at incorporation. And it had a lot of critical areas involved in it. But there was also lots of opposition where the council was stepping in saying, we don't want this project. There was a state senator saying they didn't want this project. And this project delayed for years. Now, it's prior to a lot of current land use zoning. So that the timeframes were so extended that this case didn't go to trial. It started in 1993. It went to trial in 2005, if that gives you an idea of how long. Basically, the jury sided with the developers, said the city unreasonably delayed, and they delayed because the council didn't want this project. And there were deals that were made, you know, on it, like, if we do this, can we get approval? Can we move on? And the council would just reject those outright. So it got very ugly, and the jury awarded it $10 million. That was a bit of a shock. So what do you do when you get a $10 million verdict? You appeal it. So we appealed it. And I will tell you, the Court of Appeals was not kind to the city council in that decision. They basically said there was a complete interference with this business. There was a concerted effort throughout the project for the council to insert themselves and influence the planning department and delay this project to the tune of $10 million. The next one is Mission Springs versus Spokane. Spokane is not one of our cities. So the Mission Springs case, I like to call it listen to your city attorney case. It starts out with a development that was not liked in the community. And it was going through the process, basically followed all of the law, met all of the requirements. The mayor had gotten a lot of contact from citizens. And so the mayor invited the opposition citizens to a council meeting, did not invite the developer, and it was not on the agenda. And then in the middle of the meeting said, I would like an update on the Mission Springs project. Planning director says we're about to issue grading permits. Mayor says, I am ordering you to not issue those permits. So the city attorney, now I'm gonna guess that your city attorney would say, we need to go into an executive session right now and discuss the potential liability arising from doing that. For reasons I do not know, the city attorney did not do that, but basically said on the record, you have no legal authority to do that. And if you do, you are breaking the law. So what do you think the mayor did? Don't issue the permit. And he turned to council members and said, do you agree? Do you agree? And they all said yes. So developer finds out and immediately files suit. And the courts said, not only was it illegal under state law, it was illegal under federal law. And it was done in bad faith, and it was done against the advice of your attorney. So you knowingly broke the law. So this project was delayed because they had to sue, because the planner had held it up. And they had absolutely no coverage from their insurance because it was an intentional breaking of the law. So I know there was all kinds of money paid. I have no idea who paid it. It was 6 figures, but they basically said, and also no legislative immunity, so that they could go after the mayor personally, and they did. So be very careful. I know that you will listen to your attorney when they say do not do something. My guess is it will likely be in an executive session, because it's rare that attorneys will say you're breaking the law right on the dais, but they did. What I will also tell you is, something that's very popular with cities is development agreements. And my caution here with development agreements is those are contracts. So when you're dealing in contractual law, it's going to be interpreted as a breach of contract, which I don't cover. So a couple of cities have been surprised lately to be, litigating development agreements, and basically finding out that, they're on their own for any damages arising out of that breach of contract. So I just put that out there because some are worded such that it has to go to an arbitration, and it's under contractual law, not tort law, which is what I cover. So I'm not saying there's anything bad with them, just know it may get you out of my coverage. So any questions on land use before I move on to personnel? All right. Personnel law. What I will tell you is personnel law changes daily. It's very complex. We actually have a program that we offer our members, which is when they're going to be looking at a personnel action, or there are complaints that arise, that we will allow them to consult with a personnel attorney. And we pay for that cost because it is always changing and nobody can be 100% up on personnel law. So again, this is an area where I'm going to say stay within your role. I have had situations where council members have gotten involved in personnel issues and it never ends well. Your role is to set policies, budgets, municipal codes. It's the executive's role to deal with any type of disciplinary matters, management of employees, hiring, firing. So if you're aware of an issue, you need to let Jean know about it. And allow Jean to work on that issue so that he can keep in that executive role. I've had situations where employees will go to a particular council member, and once I shouldn't, this is probably not, but once they figure out that you're the person they can talk to, then they're going to come to you with every problem that they have, and that is not your role, and that's not where you want to be. So I would encourage you always to refer them back to the executive. Also, harassment and discrimination. You are held to the city's harassment and discrimination policy. So the easiest thing to think about harassment and discrimination is the golden rule. Treat others as you would want to be treated. It's as simple as that. I have had situations where council members have, touched female employees inappropriately. I have had council members who have asked to date employees of the city. Those are inappropriate, and they're in violation of the harassment and discrimination policy. The other thing you should know is that in your policy, if somebody is being harassed or discriminated against and they notify you, that is notice to the city that there's a problem. So you need to immediately let Jean know that you received that complaint. And I will also tell you, there is no such thing as confidentiality in a harassment complaint. If somebody comes to you and says, this is happening, but I don't want you to tell anybody, you have to say, I am obligated to do something with that information. You're now the city. Now, I've told employees this, I will keep it as confidential as possible. It doesn't need to be spread around, but I do need to report this. We have to take action, and the city is obligated to look into that complaint. So if you're aware of it, if you see something, you need to let administration know, let your HR director know. If you're aware of it, you need to tell somebody. And again, remember, you are held to those same standards. So if you haven't looked at the city's harassment policy, I encourage you to look at it. Basically, it's, again, I think the golden rule is the easiest way to think about it. But I think most of you know, it's not okay to treat people how you don't want to be treated. And again, we offer online harassment training. We offer harassment training. And I shouldn't say how to harass, anti-harassment training, sorry. And, we want to make sure that everybody is aware of what's okay and what's not okay. So any questions on personnel? All right. Next topic is, this one's a little confusing. I title it negligent misrepresentation, but I'll give you an example. It's basically if you make an assurance or a promise and somebody relies on that and you were wrong and they were damaged, that's negligent misrepresentation. So here's the example that will simplify it. One of our members has a very cute downtown and all of the businesses are clad in cedar shingle. And one day at lunchtime, a business owner came in, planning wasn't, they were at lunch. And so the mayor was there. And this business owner came to the mayor and said, look, I know that we're supposed to use cedar shingle. I can't afford cedar shingle on my business. Is it okay if I just use stucco? And what do you think the mayor said? Of course. Sure. You know what? You are an important business. We want to make sure that you stay here. We get it. Tough times. Go ahead. So he tears down all the shingle and he starts putting up stucco. And what do you think happens next?
Planning commission came home.
And then red tagged it and said, stop work order. That is, you are violating code. And he said, but I talked to the mayor. Went back. The mayor said, yeah, I did tell him that. So guess who paid to help him? All of the costs, reimbursed all of his costs. Now he still had to do it in cedar shingle, but to tear it down and all of the materials, that was a negligent misrepresentation. So what I would say is, if you're given a question, I always say, you have experts right over here. So if somebody has a question, you can say, let me refer you to the appropriate person at the city. Let your experts answer those questions. Now, if you're uncomfortable and you just want to follow up, you can ask, hey, did you get back to that citizen? But you want to get out of that process of answering those specific questions. You also don't want to take matters into your own hands. Many years ago, we had a sewer backup and a council member was a neighbor and said, don't worry, we'll take care of everything. We'll pay for it all. Well, it was a contractor who had dumped cement into the manhole that caused a sewer backup. But guess what? Because that council member said, we'll take care of it all, I had a problem because this person hired all of their people to clean it up and had all their construction done, said, but I knew the city was paying for it. We said, but the contractor caused it. So we went to the contractor and said, well, hey, you didn't give us a chance to hire our own people to clean it, remediate it, all of that. So it was a big dispute. So again, I would say, no specific promises or assurances. And, again, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. I say, I don't know all the time. I have no idea. Let me get you to my subject matter expert. Because I'm not going to answer that question and be wrong. I'm going to give it to the person who can answer it. Mm-hmm. So again, that's my due. Refer it to your very talented staff because they can definitely answer those questions. Mm-hmm. Okay, next slide. Defamation. Now, this slide takes on a whole new meaning, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. If a statement is of a legislative concern, you're fine. You're here to debate. You're here to have a good airing on legislative issues. That's not, going back and forth and having that discussion, that's what you're here for. Where you can get into trouble as council members is when you're dealing with individuals. And when I mean individuals, it's a member of staff. It's a member of the public. What I will tell you is any untruth can give rise to liability. So, I've seen things that, Anne is a liar. Okay, is that defamation? Maybe. Do you, but maybe what you're saying, this statement was a lie. No, it's not. It was the truth. Any untruth could give rise to liability. Now, there are times when you're campaigning. Believe it or not, there's a Supreme Court decision that says you can defame your opponent all you want, which, it's interesting to me they got to the Supreme Court to say you can defame your opponent, but you can't. So elections, this does not apply to. This applies when you are sitting as a council member and you're talking about individuals. There are sometimes you can say some things about public officials that got to be pretty high up. And I wouldn't recommend it. And I think if you have issues with specific, even, personnel matters, you have an executive session to discuss personnel. You don't want to do it on the dais. And the reason I said that this takes on a whole new meaning, and I don't know how many of you saw it, but a Spokane County Sheriff's Officer just received an $18 million jury award for defamation against the Spokane County Sheriff. A jury, $18 million. That is mind-blowing for defamation. And it had to do with his termination, which was not grieved at all. Like his union didn't grieve it. He didn't go through the process, but it was a press conference that the county sheriff gave that gave rise to this defamation claim. So $18 million is staggering. And we're all, we don't have the county. So, and we called the risk pool that has the county and said, what happened? And they said, we're still trying to figure it out. So I don't have any of the insight as to how it got that bad. But that is shocking. That is a shocking number for defamation. So again, remember that pool at $18 million, that's, fellow counties are helping foot that bill. Taxpayers are footing that bill. So again, just remember, the risks you take don't just affect you, they affect your surrounding communities that are all part of this organization. Next slide, please. So with Public Works, I have a slide here, and this one's kind of near and dear to my heart because I handled a lot of road design litigation over the years. And what I will ask you is to not do something that I call political engineering. So what happens often is, citizens come to you and they'll say, I really want a crosswalk at this location. I really want a stop sign at this location. And it sounds great. It sounds like, yeah, that's community safety. You want a crosswalk. What you need to know is that road design litigation is basically an engineering malpractice claim. And so what will happen is if somebody walks in the crosswalk that you put in at the request of your citizens and it wasn't engineered, you have a problem. Because believe it or not, crosswalks aren't force fields. And, you need to engineer where that crosswalk goes. You need to make sure it has the warrants. I mean, I've seen crosswalks where people come out of a curve and somebody put a crosswalk there. That is the worst. That is a massive conflict. So what you want to do is refer it, when people ask you for that, refer it to your engineering staff to engineer a potential solution. I years ago had a mayor say, you know what, Ann, that I had exactly that happen where citizens came in and said they wanted a stop sign. I put a stop sign in, and boy, everything behind it was backed up. There were near collisions. There were angry people. We took that out so fast. He goes, we put it in after one council meeting, and the second council meeting, I had, hundreds of citizens saying that is a hazard. So you want to engineer these things. Why is this important? Because you're thinking, wait, Ann, you know, a crosswalk, if somebody's in it, the opposing vehicle is going to be responsible for hitting the person in the crosswalk. Well, there's something in our state called joint and several liability. And what that says is a fault-free plaintiff, so somebody in a crosswalk, they're fault-free. They can sue multiple parties. And if one party is 1% negligence, they can collect the entire award. So you would often think like, well, the driver's 50% responsible, the city's 50% responsible, the city would pay 50%. That's not what happens in these cases if the plaintiff is fault-free. So what ends up often happening is the city is, quote, the deep pocket, because you have the money. So, you know, oftentimes the causing driver will have no or minimal insurance limits. So the city is brought in and as a defendant so that they can trigger joint and several liability. And these are usually multi-million-dollar cases. So, you know, when you have these horrible accidents, when they happen, you want to talk to your staff, you want to let them look at what occurred. Are there treatments that need to be put in and they need to engineer it? You want to avoid inflammatory statements. We've had cases where councils have said, you know, it was just a matter of time before someone was killed. Well, then you are at trial as a witness for the plaintiff. And it has happened. And so, you know, again, you have staff that can engineer these solutions. There are traffic calming measures that can be done, but let them work through the problem, because you can create exactly the opposite of what you're trying to achieve if you're not allowing them to properly engineer the solution. Next. This is my plea not to leak executive session information. Sometimes you hear really interesting stuff in exec session. I would ask you resist the temptation to share. I have had situations where we have been asked to provide a briefing on a particular litigation in executive session. And next thing I know, the other side has all of my defense. You've just tied my hands behind my back. I've had situations where we've been in executive session and talked about what offer, you know, do you think you're going to make, or what's the maximum you're going to put on this? The other side had it. I go to mediation. They know exactly my dollar and said, why are you starting there? I know that you have X. So, you know, there's a reason you have executive session. And that reason is because, you know, you are talking about things that if they were divulged in public would hurt you, would, you know, limit your ability to defend it. I've had situations where a council decided to leak a letter. Most of the time in exec session, we'll pull back any material we give you, but somebody, you know, hid it under the table and sent it to the newspaper. So our whole defense was on the front page of the local newspaper. When that occurs, and if I know I have a problem, I will not tell you anything. I will shut down, and we've done it, where I said, there is a leak on this council. We will not tell you any status with regard to that litigation. We won't tell the city anything. WCIA is going to withhold information because we can't trust it. And I don't want to do that. You want to know what's going on. You want to know status. And so again, I would ask you, you know, don't jeopardize our defense. Don't tell the other side what, you know, what we're doing and what we have, because in the end, it's going to cost everyone more money. And I have seen situations where there's been sanctions imposed on a council member for leaking information in exec session. So that can happen. Any questions? All right. And this is lastly, I would say, be mindful of your communications. Your email is evidence. It can and will be used against you in a court of law. Be aware how you come across an email. Sometimes the receiver reads it a little differently than what was intended. I would still have conversations, especially when you're, you know, talking about highly sensitive matters. Get up. Go over, have a conversation with somebody to say, you know, I'm really concerned about, let's just say this, you know, this crosswalk area. I've seen some, you know, close calls. Why don't you just call staff on that? You don't need to put it in writing. But at the same time, if you are going to use your email, use the city's email. Don't use your personal email. You want to make sure it's disclosable. The idea is, that you are communicating on behalf of the city. It should be subject to public disclosure. I'm a public entity. I carry 2 phones. I have a personal phone and I have a WCIA phone, and I have WCIA email, and they never meet. I make sure my public information is on my public cell phone, on my public email, so that it can be found. You also, want to make sure that anytime you're asked to provide public records and you're using your personal computer and you may have some, make sure you're searching that and you're turning them over. There have been some cases where council members have had things on their personal computer, and basically it made the personal computer subject to search because they hadn't turned it over and somebody learned about it. So, the best thing is make sure that you've got a nice clean delineation and it's easy for you to track down that public information that you can disclose. I would also say, be aware of your social media accounts. Are they private social media? I'll give you, Facebook is the big one. Are they election accounts? Election accounts are different. If it's, re-elect, that's not subject to disclosure, but you can get into problems if you have a city council account and you shut down or you basically open a dialogue and then shut it down. So I'll give you the example. A mayor had not shut down comments on his Facebook page. And so a hate group actually started posting on his social media. And so what would you do if a hate group is doing that? You'd block them. What happened is he had created a public forum, which means by inviting people, you can shut down comments on your page. You don't have to have it open to comment, but because he opened it up and created a public forum, when he blocked them, he violated their First Amendment rights. So that's where I say, be careful what you're doing, and are you opening a dialogue and a forum? And so in that case, we actually had to pay damages for the First Amendment violation of that hate group. So there's ways to control it. And again, there's all kinds of guidance on this. MRSC is somebody that we work with quite a bit. AWC has some guidance on this. So just be aware of it. If you have any questions, I would recommend you talk to your city attorney on a lot of these issues, especially with regard to public disclosure, public documents, and your Facebook pages. So with that, those are all my don'ts. I had a few do's in there, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I guess I had one quick question. So as far as the pool, how do you guys determine and maintain membership? So like with an insurance carrier, if they've got, a repeat offender, they're able to drop that. How do you guys manage the pool in that fashion?
It's a really great question. We actually don't just kick people out because we believe in due process. We're very municipal that way. So being so municipal, we have progressive discipline that basically we call our member action plan that says, hey, you're causing a lot of problems. What are you going to do to fix it? We do things like, sometimes we place deductibles on a member saying you're not properly managing this risk. And so it's all done through the executive committee. They decided, it's not me. The other thing is, the more losses you have, we call it an assessment. It's not a rate, but there is a loss cost to your charges. So there are members that get, higher rate increases because of that. So in terms of, controlling members, we do our best, but we really work with the members. We don't believe in, we're just going to cancel your coverage. We're going to point it out and give you all the tools that we can to help you mitigate that and manage it.
Thank you.
Hey, and when you started out, you said that the same environment as 1983 is the same environment as today. What does that mean?
So insurance carriers do not like public entity risk. So remember, I mentioned this $18 million verdict. That's happening nationwide. There is what's called social inflation of verdicts. There's erosion of municipal liabilities. And especially in Washington state, we have an extremely generous tort climate. We have, in fact, a bill right now in front of the legislature to expand police liability even further. And what's occurring is carriers are pulling out of our state. So we had 4 different carriers drop writing our coverage. They just wouldn't work with us because they said Washington is too generous and they're for profit. They want to make money. And so similarly, that's happening nationwide, but other states have what's called tort caps where they can only collect so much money, or they have immunities, so they're more likely to stay in those states. But Washington state is facing an insurance crisis where all of us as risk pools are having a hard time finding insurance. When I will tell you, cities, bigger cities that always bought insurance can't find it and are calling us, and we're saying you're too big, you don't fit our program. But it is basically they can't make money. We don't have immunities, we don't have tort caps, and these massive verdicts, they're saying they don't want to do business here. So that's we have struggled. We were able to get reinsurance this year, but I had one suitor and nobody else would talk to me. So that's where we're at. And again, this is nationwide, but in Washington, it's critical. It really is. And I've been letting legislators know that we're facing a crisis. We really are.
So assuming you have a limited group of insurers out there, I'm assuming our rates are going to be going up
Yes.
dramatically.
This past year, your rates went up 20% because of it, because of the verdicts and because of the increase in insurance costs. Yes,
And so that's probably going to continue the next couple of years.
likely.
Until legislation is changing the formula, right?
I would hope so. If we can get loss costs down through good risk management, I would say the biggest thing we can do as a group is to manage risk, number one, and not have these multi-million-dollar exposures. But 2, yes, we're gonna actually start looking at, can we start talking in this state, it's kind of not a popular topic, but tort reform. We need to start having those conversations because we have hemorrhaged millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars over the last several years. So it's again, this is, we exist because this happened before. And that's why you're not seeing what other cities are seeing, which is a doubling of rates or no insurance at all. And I've had lots of cities saying we can't get insurance and they're just too big for me. So
What is too big for you? What size city, like a large city?
a Seattle, a Spokane, Vancouver.
So under 100,000 or something like that.
I'm not good with population, but we've got bigger cities. We've got Kirkland, Olympia.
Okay.
We've got cities of that size. When I say big city, I mean, a Seattle, a Tacoma, a Spokane.
Great. Okay.
We'll never be there.
Hopefully not.
Once we get UGA, we'll be fine. We'll get that.
And can you talk briefly about some of the training that WCI provides? I know some reimbursement for some training that helps with mitigation.
Yeah, we offer about 1,700 trainings a year. If you go on our website, you'll see on a variety of topics. So not only do we do our own trainings, but as you mentioned, we also have what we call our reimbursement program, where we allow for reimbursement of various trainings done by outside entities and accreditations as well. So we try very hard to look for trainings that can help mitigate liability, and cities can, basically ask for reimbursement of those various trainings. So it's across all kinds of exposure. So, you have law enforcement will do accreditation, but if you also have, I know we have a lot of cybersecurity that you can be reimbursed for as well. So, but our trainings, a lot of them have been online lately. We have an online academy, which is on demand, but we also have been doing trainings online. We used to be almost all in person. And now with the virtual aspect, we've had great turnout and we've trained about 15,000 city employees each year. So it's significant. So our website is wciapool.org if you ever want to look at that. We also, the last couple of years, we've been doing forums. So we do a police chief forum that honestly has been so popular. We had people sneaking in that were non-members. And so we were laughing because there was a buzz to our police chief forums that got non-members sneaking in behind the scenes. So, but we do it for a variety of different, HR, risk management, public works forums, things like that.
Anything else for him? You have a great presentation. We're very glad you're here in person.
I appreciate you inviting me and I'm glad I could talk to you in person and thank you very much. And I'm glad you are not in any of those stories. That's your goal. Never be one of Ann's stories.
I took a note on a couple of the mayor comments. So
Well, thank you.
thank you, Ann.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Let's move to the next
Thank
point.
you, Ann.
Was that Kelly? What was that?
I was on you.
Oh, the voice. All right, let's go with agenda item C, council liaison feedback. Russ.
Okay, Russ Wright, Community Development Director. Thank you, Council, Mayor. So tonight, we just wanted to talk about how the council sees their role with the liaisons and the type of communication you'd like to see. We had this conversation earlier, late last year as it related to the Planning Commission, and staff had come back with some ideas that we would provide you with some quarterly updates on the progress on the work plan. We'd agreed to come back and do an additional briefing with council prior to setting any hearing dates. So we had talked about a lot of things in terms of the Planning Commission. And I believe one of the council members may have not been at that meeting, but had asked that we have that conversation again, as well as the council president. And so we just wanted to use the Planning Commission example to sort of frame this discussion on some of the talking points we've had and some ways to increase dialogue, but also broaden it a little bit to talk about what does that look like with your other boards and commissions and your liaisons, and what do you see council as the free flow of information, and what can we do to make sure that that's happening. So opening the floor up to the council for your discussion on this topic.
Well, the problem as I see it is that liaison can come and give, during our briefings, we can say, well, I went to the Veterans Commission and we talked about this. And it's a really high level view of what's, been talked about. So the problem is we don't get any kind of information about which direction that commission or board is going on a particular topic that we might have a little bit of a problem with. So the question really is how do we get that information without having to go ourselves? So, all of a sudden we get a report and it's up to us to make a decision on an ordinance or whatever. And the Planning Commission, let's just call it the Planning Commission this time, and they send us their recommendation and we don't agree with it. Well, why didn't we know we weren't going to agree with this before it comes to us as a full recommendation? And I don't know I'm not really sure how we deal with that other than attending all the commissions and hearing what's going on, or taking time and watching the videos and stuff, which I've started to do, but I've started running out of time after a while. And so that's where I think the problem is. It's how do we get that kind of information that, hey, I have a problem with that. And I didn't think we were going to go that direction. I'd rather go this direction. How do we give information back to the Planning Commission that, yeah, we're gonna have a little sticking point here so that they can look at it again or whatever. That's my input.
I don't think we've had much of this problem. Just
Had 4
arose.
problems in 13 years.
Say again?
We've had 4 problems in 13
Right.
years.
So it's not something that's all the time a problem. It's just sometimes I think the council would feel that maybe a certain group, Planning Commission, missed the mark on what we were looking for. And I can agree with you, they could give us feedback and so forth on the topics and so forth. But, I just think every once in a while they miss the mark on what the council's idea of the ordinance or whatever's coming forward. And I think that's going to happen from time to time. And that's where as a council, we can say, hey, we don't feel like you are representing what the council's opinion is, and we can send it back to them. I mean, do we want to have every board reporting every little thing to us all the time? I don't think that's not what we wanted to do. We put this board together to do that and give us opinions. Do we want a little feedback? Sure, but I think we're creating a tremendous amount of work for ourselves doing that, in my opinion.
Mary, did you have something?
No, I'm just saying.
Oh, okay.
No, it is liaison. I'm a liaison for a whole bunch of stuff, and so is everybody else here. I just think it's our task. I believe our task as liaisons is to bring what we have learned at the meeting or whatever and share it with everybody. We're not saying it's the wrong thing, but at the same time, sometimes things come up that we do need to know about, whether it's the senior center or the museum or whatever that the council needs to know about. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be in those meetings and hear those stories. That's all I have to say.
Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that's the STR thing from the planning commission. Did we make a mistake as a council by not sending it back to the planning commission after we decided that we didn't like it? Was that where the mistake was made? Because that's what I think we did. I think that's what we did wrong. That's my opinion, but I think that's what we might have done wrong.
Well, I think in that
Gary, what do you
instance,
think? You sit there all the time. You're the liaison.
Well, I guess the purpose of this discussion right now is not to revisit the STRs.
No,
and
I'm
what the
not trying to
council
revisit
did.
that. I'm trying to revisit the process.
I would say that if you're wanting more reporting, as Councilmember Dixon said, we need to be prepared to have more time to report that. We always get in the situation where I think there's a general feeling that we spend too much time at council meetings, and I'm not of that opinion, but I've certainly heard that said that we need to move on. And so I guess where's that balance? Where's the push and the tug and so forth? So I guess I would say if you're looking for more information from a particular board, we need to be prepared to listen to it. And I guess to answer your question regarding the STR, since you asked that, I would agree. The route for that would be to remand it back to the planning commission or any board and say, this is kind of what we're thinking, and would ask for reconsideration to address specific topics. So, and I guess that's a communication that takes place between the council and the board. I'm not going to sit here and say that we need to agree with everything that every board brings forward either. Gosh sakes, that's we're here to debate things and exchange different ideas. So, if there's a particular board that has an opinion and finds that opinion valid, so be it. I mean, gosh sakes.
Council President Jorstad has her hand raised.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I can't be there in person tonight. I just want to expand a little bit on something Councilmember Peter Sagan mentioned. I do think that it would be good to allow for, or I guess for me, this reminds me that as a liaison and during council business, we do have a responsibility not just to give kind of a high level brief overview maybe of the meetings that we're attending, but if there is something that is happening in those meetings that really does impact our city or our council or is going to come to us for approval at some point, I think it's worth taking the extra a couple minutes to give a little bit more detail, to make sure council understands, to spend that time. I think that time spent is worthwhile. So that just kind of helps remind me that that the liaison job isn't just kind of a report out of, hey, I attended and here are the hot topics, but maybe a little bit more in depth when there's something that is likely going to be moving forward. Thanks.
So what that means to me, and I don't disagree with you at all, is we take an extra minute or so in our conversation about what our liaison duties are when we're reporting out. And what I would take from that from now on, let's say that Gary brings something back from the planning commission and that piques my interest to know more, I'm going to go back to the video of that meeting and try to find out what they're talking about. And then I would be taking that responsibility to try to figure that out. That's the way that's what that means to me. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I think that's the way I'm going to take it from now on, is if somebody comes from like the Parks Board, for instance, comes in and said, hey, they're talking about this park and they're thinking about doing this. Well, no, I'm kind of interested and I'm gonna go back and look at that. See where it's going. So that's what I'm taking out.
Once again, this has happened 4 times in 13 years. I mean, I think that there's room for it in the meetings and so forth. I'll be the first one to say I don't like 3-hour meetings. You know, especially when we do workshops on top of the 3-hour meetings. But that being said, I think if there's something, you know, if Gary's at planning and says, hey, here's something that's coming, you know, our way, whether it be, you know, the park board's talking about short-term rentals, or, hey, there seems like a lot of people talking about what we're doing with a piece of property. You know, hey, that's coming our way. So that might be something that you guys look at and go refer back to the planning department and take a look at that, because they're bringing up a bunch of points that maybe you guys want to think about before it comes in front of us.
That's the way I'm gonna take it. No.
This is Angie again. Excuse me. I agree it doesn't happen often, but I think that, you know, we heard pretty clearly from the Planning Commission at our last meeting that they attended, and we had our joint meeting, that they feel unheard and that they don't feel as though the process has been working and the communication has been working in the best way possible. So I guess I think this is an opportunity to hear the boards and commissions bringing forth their concerns about communication, and just make sure that we're doing everything we can to communicate as best we can amongst each other and bring forth the information that might help that communication flow a little bit better.
All right, anything else? Thanks, good discussion on it. I like the idea of maybe sending it back to, if we're not in agreement, if the council's not in agreement, to send it back to a commission with some guidance and let them have another shot at it versus going off on a different tangent with it. I like that idea.
Do you think we were wrong to have council group get together and do that, look at it? And
I think in retrospect, I think it would have been a better procedure to outline some guidance, send it back and give those who we've already entrusted with that opportunity, that I don't know what I want, that process, to have another shot at it.
I'm just thinking if the council's in disagreement about it as well, and then we send mixed signals back to.
Yeah, you know, audible off of what the subject is and what the disagreements are, but if there's a unanimous,
Sure.
yeah, we're not totally on board with this because of these things, take another shot at it. I think that's probably a good procedure.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
I like that. That's good.
All right, good discussion. All right, so in front of you is the agenda for January 24th. Just a note, we tried to pack this day for a couple of reasons. So the next Tuesday after that is the 31st. We don't have a scheduled meeting for that day because it's the 5th Tuesday. The next Tuesday would be a workshop day. And then the next council day would be the 14th, which is just before our retreat. So we're trying
before we go to AWC.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. The 7th is before the retreat.
Yes, yeah.
And the 14th is AWC.
That day we're traveling to AWC.
Yeah. So we're trying to load everything up. So hypothetically, as long as nothing major comes up, we may not see another city council meeting until the 28th. 21st, maybe 21st workshop,
That would be a
28th
workshop, yes.
city council. Yeah.
Of February.
Of February, correct. Yeah, so that's why you're seeing things loaded up here, and staff tried to get most everything on there that we could figure out that we would need done before maybe 3 to 4 weeks out.
Can I ask a question about mayor's business?
You can.
What is a proclamation for Kathy Holder?
Kathy Holder passed away, and we wanted to do a proclamation
Oh, I didn't know that.
in her memory.
It's really sad.
Yeah, it is really sad.
When did that happen?
She passed away about a month ago.
A little less than a month ago.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I hope her husband's doing that. What's that?
Any questions on the agenda? All right, with that, we shall adjourn for the night. Thank you.